Okay, so I've got the model fairly well complete. There'd still be lots of little details I could add in, but the shell of the building's basically done. And sorry guys, can you just keep it there? And then the site and the other main components outside the building are done as well. But again, there'd be lots of little details you could add in. Perhaps the path would be a nice thing to add around here, and then the path coming out the back and the patio and everything. So I might touch on that towards the end of this video, but what I'm going to focus on is fitting out the interiors, and so getting some furnishings and also setting some extra materials for the interiors, and also looking at the lighting. So there's a bit to look at. I'm going to go to a section box view that I have showing the main floor level with the kitchen and dining area. Let's make that a bit larger. And you can see I've added in most of the kitchen, and I've got to add then the dining room furniture and the lounge. And so I'll go through that basic process, and then I'll adjust the materials for all of these things. And so going into the ground floor floor plan, just going to go onto architecture and then component to load in some families. So using load family, and then I'm going to browse up to the P drive, interior design, and CAD1, and then you'll see the Beach House Resources folder. Because I'm going to be going there a few times, I'm going to make a shortcut for that just by dragging that folder over to this grey bar on the left, which will give me a shortcut that'll remain there. Click on that button, and I've got a few families in this folder, such as the bed and all of these doors. But then I've downloaded a bunch of families from Revit City and put them all into the one folder there, Revit City Furniture. And so I have there some dining tables, which I'll just grab, so I'm going to use this one. And space, as you place these, will rotate them. And then again, load family. You have to browse each time. That's why the shortcut's so useful. And I'll get some lounge chairs. So that's the one I want. It's actually a bit of an awkward space, this one. I've never really known how to furnish it, but yeah. Yeah, well, if you make a shortcut to it, it saves a lot of time. So I'm just going to place a lounge chair. Maybe actually, sorry, over here is what I'm going to go with. This is how I've usually done it. So it's not obvious when you've got lots of straight lines like this, but when you're near a line that's at a different angle, so I'm just looking for something that's not straight. Basically everything here is pretty much straight. There we go. So there's a chair that's not straight. So when you press space, when you're near something that's at a different angle, you'll see it will snap to that. It's not picking that chair up, unfortunately, but anyhow, you might see that happen maybe if I go near this. No, they're all straight, but essentially it's highlighting those floorboard lines there, and you can see the lounge is rotating to go in line with them. And so just watch out for that when you're using space to rotate things. It can rotate at angles that you won't expect. And so I'll just get a few more of these families. So there's some shelving, and so it's all in, if you missed that one, it's all in the CAD1 folder on the P drive, interior design, and then CAD1. Beach House Resources. Yep, there we are. Yeah, the second file, yep. If you are you using component, yeah, you've got to be on component to begin with to bring it in. Not on the insert tab. You're on the insert tab. Just click on component, the button that says component. Yeah, and then load family. Okay, so I'll just get the that last coffee table, and that will do it for now. So I'm going to make a perspective view looking through that area using the camera tool up the top. So I'll go from the maybe from near the stairs, looking towards those pieces I've just placed. And you'll see usually when you make a perspective view, the field of view is going to be too narrow. So you can straight away widen that by dragging the edges. But don't go too far, because if the field of view is too wide, then it'll distort the view. Okay, so as well as using the crop region to change what you see, it's good to get used to using the navigation wheel. And so there, you just want to check that it's on the full navigation wheel before you click on the tool itself. And this one, with the other views, with plans and even the default 3D views, the navigation wheel is not that useful. But for the camera views, it's extremely useful. So I'm going to go to full navigation wheel, and then it's good to try all of these and get used to the way they work with the camera. But here I'm only going to use pan to bring the camera up and down. And then also across, I can use, sorry, that's about what I want. Look to change the angle that the camera is looking. And then walk, using that little dot there, you can bring the camera forwards or backwards. So just move it slowly at first to get used to that one. And zoom changes the angle of the view. So that's similar to what happens when you're changing the or stretching the border. Just going to widen that a little bit. And so I'm happy with that. I'm just going to close this one and then continue widen the field of view using the border there. And so you'll see a lot of things in perspective that you can't see in plan, such as the height of this table. So I'm going to go to edit type while that's selected, and you can see then the height there is a property I can adjust. So I'll just change that to something lower, say 450. Hit apply, and the table hasn't changed. So that's a common thing with families that have been made by other people, and things you find on Revit City are often going to be set up like this. I also want to show you how to change the materials, and with the materials you'll have similar issues. So I just want to show you how you can get those things to work. Right, so firstly I need to be able to edit that family. So while it's selected, I'm going to change to a plan view, and then you'll see I get the edit family tool. So it's just one of those things with Revit. In a perspective view, you don't have all the tools that you have in other views. So you just need to make sure you know how to switch a view to a different kind of view, and then you'll get those extra tools. So now using edit family, I can switch into the file. Yeah, I will once I finish recording. Okay, so okay, so here I'm going to switch to a front view, And you can see then that the height is set in that view, and it's got this dimension associated with it. So I'm going to start by just selecting that reference plane and moving that plane up and down. You can see maybe why that height isn't working in the family file. Okay, it just hasn't been linked properly. So I'm going to select that dimension, and then using the grips I'm going to stretch that. So that's for the length, so I'll just select that again. I'm going to stretch that onto the top of the table. So you'll see it'll highlight the edge on the top of that table. Then I'll again just stretch this one out and stretch this bottom grip again, this time so it aligns with the reference plane, and again you can see it's highlighting that reference plane or reference level. So now with that dimension selected, I'm going to set the label there back to height, and then again, well this time I'm going to change the height in a different way. I'm going to go into the family types panel, and then you can see there the height I'll change to say 500, or what I want it to be, 450. Apply, and you can see now that it has changed the table. Okay, so I'm going to delete that extra reference plane, I don't even need that one. And I'll save that file. Yes, to save it, and just to check where it's saving, I'm going to go to Save As, and then Family, and make sure it's saved into the folder that I've given you. So you can see there's a backup there now, which is the previous version of that family. Okay, so I'm going to then load that into the project and overwrite the existing version and its parameter values, the bottom option here. And then going into the perspective view, you can see now it's a lower table. It can get pretty technical adjusting parameters and things like that, but it's something that you need to spend time with if you're going to work with families. So now I want to try adjusting the materials, and it's the same basic process. So I'm going to change the view to realistic so I can see the materials that it's going to render with. I'm going to select that table, go to edit type, and you can see here the two materials that can be assigned. So I've got base material and top material. So the base material I'll leave on wood, I'm happy with that. Then the top material, it's got laminate linen mat. I'm going to hit the browse button at the end, and that will let me change the material. So you've got in Revit two lists of materials. On the left here, that's your main list of materials for the project, and this is a part I think everyone struggles with at first in Revit, getting used to using this list only and worrying about the other panel appearance afterwards. So always start with the list on the left. That is the material that's assigned to your object. So I want to maybe make a new material from scratch. So I'm going to start with a plastic material that's close to what I want. Okay, so I've got here some different plastics, and that's always a good process. Find a material that's close to what you want. Don't try and make new materials, which you have options for down here. I see a lot of people doing this and getting confused when you bring up, the panel down the bottom there, which will let you make new materials from scratch. That's an extra process that you don't need to always perform, and it will probably confuse you and add too many things in the list here as well. So we'll turn that back off. A better process, I think, is to start with a material that's, again, close to what you want. Duplicate it by right-clicking on it and going to duplicate. And then give a new name. So I'll call this plastic yellow. Now obviously this one is cyan, and I need to change that to be yellow to match the name I've given it. Okay, so then after you've given your new name, then go to appearance, and you'll see then that usually you'll have a number here on the left, and that's telling you how many assets or how many materials this asset is being used by. And that's the part that really confuses people the most at first in Revit when you're using materials. So again, a good process here is to duplicate or replace the appearance with a new one. If you don't do that, you're going to confuse yourself and end up changing materials that you don't mean to. So it's probably the most important step, is to remember this part: duplicate or replace the appearance after you've made a new name over on the left. So I'm not going to duplicate because I'm going to choose replace.
Why would you choose replace over duplicate?
Oh, because with replace you go to the main appearance library and you can choose a pre-made material from here rather than setting it all up yourself. So on the left here you can see I've gone to the appearance library folder, and then there's a plastic folder there where I have all these pre-made plastics. Okay, so I can simply choose one that's close to what I want, like smooth yellow. So if I double click there, that'll bring this, if I close the asset browser now, that'll bring this new appearance in. So notice there's a 0 here, so that means no other materials are using this new asset. It's set to the colour I want, but I could always change that now by clicking on the colour swatch, and I can set any colour I like. So maybe I want this to be more of an off yellow, so I can always change that.
I mean, could you change it completely and make it brown?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And then back to the graphics tab. The graphics tab is showing you how it's going to show in shaded and hidden line views. So the shading colour here, you see when it's set to shading. So you can either set a colour here manually, or you can just tick use render appearance. Once you've done the appearance, it'll then pick up that appearance colour and put it in to the shading panel. I know it can seem like a lot of setting up, but it's because Revit is designed to do lots of different things. Other programs like say SketchUp are designed just to do the 3D side of your work. And then you have programs like AutoCAD which just do the 2D part of your work. Revit's doing both, and that's why you have these two different setups for your materials. So once we click OK, and then OK again, you can see in the realistic view it's using the colour that I've set. Also then if I go to the shaded view, it's got that yellow colour. Now that's still a bit too small, so I'm going to try again going back to edit type and making this a bit bigger, changing that diameter there, and you never know, it may just work. Let's see. Yes, brilliant, it has. So not all parameters need to be fixed, sometimes they will just work, and it's a really good trick using apply, so you can keep the dialog box open and see the change while you've still got those properties there. So I'm happy with that. I'm just going to click OK. And then I could render this as it is because I've already got my lights in there. But I'm going to go and do a few more materials, maybe just to reinforce that process. With, say, the lounge chair, it'll be the same basic process. If I select a lounge, go to edit type, and you can see then there are no materials in this panel, but if you look in properties over on the left here, there are some materials there.
Why is it shown on one properties but not on the
It really depends how the person who made the family decided to set it up. So sometimes you won't even see it here, but I'll show you how to fix that if it happens. Okay, so here we've got the option to change the material in properties, and really what that means is that each lounge can have a different material. So we could have one lounge grey and another one brown. So here if I go into change the this is the main lounge material. So I'll just change it to something else random just so you can see the difference. Yep, so I've made that into a lighter material. Okay, so that one's changed, this one hasn't. So that's what it means when it comes up in properties here and not when you go to edit type. Edit type changes all of the copies of that object. So that's why people set them up
Is that because it's
differently.
a unique component?
Well, it's a unique property, yeah. Yeah. So here, this table only has the option of changing those materials in the type properties. So that means all of the instances of that table have to have the same material. Whereas these lounges, as you can see, they can have different materials.
And is that because they're unique?
Well, they're not unique, but that property is, yeah.
That's fine, okay.
Okay, and so the other family, so let's look at this pyramid shelf here. If I go to that one, you can see it has no option for changing materials. It would have materials already assigned. You can see it's got to have something because it's going to render with different colours. But if I select it, you can see in the instance properties here, there are no materials properties. In edit type, there are no materials. So how do we change the materials? Just like I was showing you before, to fix the other parameters, first you need to switch to a different view. So I've kept that shelf selected and switched to a plan view. And now with edit family, I can go into that file. And then you can investigate the file. And that's what you need to remember with anything that you get online, or really from either from the Autodesk site I'm going to show you in a minute. You need to have an idea how the person making this has created those families. And you'll see if you select then any of these different parts, how the material's been set up. So here, like I was saying, there is a material assigned. These shelf components are all set to metal 2. These glass panels, again, there must be a material assigned because we can see that they're transparent. It's just not set up with a parameter. And this is the reason you don't do families really until your second CAD subject. When you go further into these, yeah, exactly, yeah. So with extrusion there, you can see once it's selected that it's set to this glass material. So I want to make that adjustable in my project. And the way you do that is by adding in your own parameters. So I'm going to use Control and select all the parts that I want to be solid. Now they actually have two different materials set up in the family originally. I'm just going to simplify it and make it one. So here I'm going to set all of these materials to have the same metal material. I'm not going to bother changing it because you'll see once you've used a family in a project, there's not much point changing the material back in the family file. And I'll explain that more once it's loaded in. So I've set all of these objects to have the same metal material. And then I'm going to do one thing extra. This button next to it, I'm going to use to add my own parameter. So here I'm going to go to add parameter, and we'll call this shelf material.
What is the parameter?
Something you can adjust, a property you can adjust.
And that's all?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Just means a property, basically. So here, shelf material is the name of my parameter. And notice I left that on type, and I'll come back to that in a minute when I do the next one. So here, the glass, I'll select both of those glass panels. The material you can see for both of those is already set to glass. But I'm going to again hit the add parameter or add associate parameter button. And then again, add parameter. And you can see then the option I mentioned where you can set it to type. The name for this I'll just make panel material. And so you saw before in that family of the lounge that it had the option to change the material in properties. That's what happens if you set it to instance here. But normally we just leave it on type. It's probably much simpler at first just to always set type parameters. And that's it. So I've got just 2 parameters in this family, and that will make it much easier to work with once I've loaded it back into the project. So I'm going to save this file again, yes to replace existing, load it into the project, and then make sure I've got my beach house project file selected. And then again here, it's usually good to choose the second option there, override existing version and its parameter values. So this hasn't changed noticeably in the plan, but if I go into my perspective view, I can see it there. I might just use the navigation wheel to orbit my view slightly so I can see the whole thing. And then I'll select it, go to edit type, and now, what do you know, I've got those two parameters. So these now can be adjusted in the project. Right, so it's not a mistake when you see a family that doesn't have parameters. It's not a mistake or something that the person who made it has done wrong. It's just a choice they've made about how they're going to manage materials. It means they've left it up to them to go back into the family file if they want to change materials, which is perfectly valid. That's how a lot of people do their work. But it does make it easier and quicker if you add your own parameters if you want to change them in the project file. And that's what I'm going to do now. So here it's using this metal material. I'm going to browse and change that to the same plastic material that I made for the table. If I can find it, what do I call it? Plastic yellow, there it is. So you don't need to make a new material for every object that you work with. Often you'll have colour schemes or material schemes where you're reusing the same materials throughout your projects, and that's often the point of doing a material board, that you're going to reuse the materials and have a bit of a theme. So it's good to set up just a few materials quite often and then just think about how you're going to assign those to your different objects. So, okay, so that's now got the same material, bit of a garish yellow, and so I might have decided, having seen that in place, that I want to now adjust the material for both of these objects and maybe go to a to a plainer material or to maybe a toned down version of that. So rather than selecting the objects, I can simply go to Manage, Materials, and then find this material in the list. Okay, so it happens to be selected because it's the last one I was working with, but you can always go and find any other material in that list there. And so I can change the colour here by turning that button off. I could then just change the colour for the shaded views, but I'm going to leave that turned on and instead go to Appearance and change it there. So I'm simply going to select that colour swatch and take this colour right down to more of a different yellow, and it's going to change both of those objects. So that's basically how you assign materials to families. I know it can get very fiddly at first when you're trying to work out where all the different properties are and the places you change materials in families, but you won't be changing a lot of materials for families. Probably will just be a few, because a lot of the families will have the main materials assigned. So things like the legs in the timber and other things like that.
Can you show us on that sofa how
Yep.
we would be able to assign
Yep.
a JPEG of a material?
Yeah, okay, yep, sure. Yep, I'll do that. Yep, absolutely. Okay, sure. Okay, so with this furnishing, the lounge there, if we want that to be a fabric, that would be a good idea. So I'm going to go to edit, sorry, not edit type. This one we know it's got the fabric set in properties over here. So I'm going to hit Browse to go to that material. And don't worry, sometimes the thumbnail over here doesn't update to match the way the material really is. Oh, there we go, it finally has updated. But don't worry if you don't see it over here, as long as you find the name that you're looking for. And then in Appearance, you can see this one actually is already using an image. Right, so I can change that image easily to a different image if you have a picture of your fabric. But say you don't have the option to change the image there. So first I'll show you how to get that to come up. Again, just by right-clicking on the Appearance tab, you can then go to Replace. Or the button over here does the same thing. That's the Replace button, the one with the two squares and the arrows. So again, same process. It's good to find one that's close to what you want. And this is a great asset, having these folders with all these different preset materials. So in the fabric folder there, you'll find a stack of different basic materials. So say the plaid one is a good one for pattern. So if I double click on it, that now has come in and replaced the appearance side of this fabric material. And then to change that image to a different one, you can click on the image swatch and you'll see how that's set up in terms of its size and positioning. You can click on the file name there to change that to a different file. And you'll see in this is the Revit library that comes installed with the program. And you'll see in there quite a few images that they just give you with the program. And these are mostly either JPEG or PNG files. And you can easily choose your own. So like I said, there's a pretty good selection there. But to choose your own, you can simply browse up the top to another folder. Now watch out, if you lose this one, it's a pretty hard one to find again, so just take a note of that path if you want to go back there. But I know I want to go to a different folder, so I'm going to go to the P drive, and then interior design, and then you'll see I've put a folder with all sorts of material images into that interior design folder, and it's called material images. So it is chock full of all sorts of images of different materials. It's so big it'll take a while to load it all. You're welcome to copy it, but I'll just warn you it's about 60 gig, so it's not going to fit on most of your memory sticks. But you're welcome to copy as much of that as you can fit on your whatever device you've got. So you can see here there are lots more fabrics in there, and then you have some subfolders that have some extra things. I haven't put everything into subfolders yet, so you just have to browse down in that section below to get most of the materials. Okay, so you can use any image file that you download and add them in the same way. Right, so the carpet, this is actually a carpet image, but they work fairly well for fabric as well. Or you've got the more patterned carpets, and there are just straight fabric images as well. But I'll maybe go for this one, that's pretty close to what I want. And if you right click on that image, you can go down to open with and then photo viewer to get a better view of the image, which is sometimes handy. So I can get an idea then how big I'd want this to be in my project. So I might think, well, it's probably about 30 centimetres or maybe 40 centimetres across in real life, this image. So that's the size I'll use. Okay, so I'm going to open that. And then down here, you can see the width and the height. So at the moment it's 457 by 279 across. That's probably not too bad. But you can easily change that size. So just think in real world terms how big you want that image to be. And that's all there is to it. So once I hit done, then I'll see it on the preview up here. You can make that preview bigger by dragging this bar down, and you can change the preview object to something different. So you have in there things like even just cubes are useful. There we go, so that's updated now, and you can also change the preview quality. It's already on production quality, so that's as high as it can go. But that can give you a good idea how that material will appear. So notice I've changed this property just in the main generic panel. You'll see sometimes there are other options that will be ticked. Probably at first it's best to disable those, but a useful one can be bumps. And so here I'm going to just cancel the image selection and instead go and choose one of the presets that you have there. So you can choose any of those things like speckles to use a formula essentially to set the bumps.
What is bumps?
So it makes it look a bit 3D, like a textured pattern. Okay, so for things like fabric, that can be useful. And you'll see with bricks and things like that, it often has a bump map as well as the colour assigned. So just keep an eye out for those things. But like I was saying at first, you can just disable any of those options down below by clearing the tick box and just focus on the one that sets the colour, which in this case is using this image file to do the colour. And that's all there is to it. So I'm just going to click OK, and then we'll see that, if we zoom in the realistic view. So this is still in shaded, so I can see the colour that's set in that material. So I'll just show you again. Okay, so this material in the appearance has that pattern, but in graphics it's got this grey colour, because with use render appearance it's detecting this image and reducing that down to a single colour, because in shaded views you can only have single colours. But if I go then to realistic, I'll see the fabric texture. Okay, so that's all there is to it, and that might be actually a good one for this lounge.
So you've now changed both of those sofas.
Yeah.
What do you want the other sofa to have different fabric?
Well, you need to change it to a different material.
But it won't change the other one back then?
No, because of the way this lounge is set up, because you're changing it in just the regular properties, it'll change just that lounge and not the other one.
Okay.
So, yeah. But for a lounge, you usually wouldn't want them to have different materials. For things like walls, so I just want to show you the way you change materials for different kinds of objects. Walls and floors, so here you can see this floor has a timber material, but I might want that to have a different timber now. So, with it selected, when you go to edit type, it's a bit different to a regular family. Notice it is still a kind of family, but it's a system family. So you change those differently. You have to go to edit the structure usually, and then you'll see the different layers that have different materials. Once you click on the browse button there, it takes you to the same material library as you have for families. And then again, just to go through that process of changing materials, you can either just choose a new one. So I've got there another flooring material that I made earlier, and I'll check the appearance. I'm happy with that. But if you want to make a new one, again, usually the process would be to right click on the left there and duplicate. So I can call this wood flooring adjusted. And then again, right click on the appearance tab and go to replace. At first you probably won't want to use duplicate here too much. Instead just use replace to begin with. Find a material that's close to what you want in the appearance folder here. So as well as the wood folder, where you have a lot of solid wood or timber, you have the flooring folder, which you'll see has a wood subfolder. And there are all sorts of different wood or timber floorboards in there. Okay, so I've made a new wood material there. Back to graphics, and you can see it's not going to change the shading colour because I didn't have this use render appearance option ticked. So you have the other options I've only just touched on, but down below, surface pattern and cut pattern are worth looking at. So the surface pattern, when you click on that swatch there, you'll see here it's set to a drafting pattern, which is a bit of a no-no actually. A good rule of thumb is to always set your surface patterns to model patterns. And so here you can see it's got this name horizontal, which is obviously going to give us these horizontal lines, but it doesn't tell us the spacing. Even when it does, here it's got horizontal 1.5, it's not in real world units, it's in print scale. So when you have a size value like this, that's telling you the size that would print out. So these lines would print out 1.5 millimeters apart. and that's not a real world scale. A real world scale is the real size those floorboards would be in real life. And so here, these spacings that you have, like 100mm horizontal, they're obviously real world sizes, not the size they would print out. They're not going to print out 10 centimetres apart on your page. They're going to be 10 centimetres across in real life. So if that's not obvious at first, just as that general rule of thumb, use model always for surface patterns. So 100mm horizontal. And to help you remind you of that, you'll see if you go to cut pattern, they can only be set to drafting. You don't even have the option there of setting model. And that can remind you that for surface patterns, you should do the opposite and always set model, not drafting. Right, so that's done. If I click OK, and OK, and OK, those boards have changed. It's only a slight change because the material is also a fairly dark one, but it is a different texture. So I might just go through that process once more, maybe this time with a wall. So I'm going to get a view that's going to show a couple of different walls. Just in this section box view, it's a bit easier to show you that. So I've got this wall here at the end of the stairs, and that might be a good wall to have as a feature wall. In other words, a wall that's a different colour to the main walls. So I'm going to select it, and you'll see at the moment it's just a generic 230mm wall. So if I go to edit type, firstly I'm going to duplicate this wall, because if you remember there are other 230mm walls in this project. So if I change this without duplicating it, they'll change as well, and I don't want that. So I'm going to duplicate the wall, and I'm going to call it feature 230mm wall. Then I'm going to go to edit the structure, and then you can see there it's using this finish material. So watch out for that. That's a material that you'll use and see come up all the time. I'm going to go to browse, and so obviously it's got finish selected, and you might realise already that finish is the material not just used by this 230mm wall, it's used by all of the walls. So if I go and start changing this material without duplicating it first, all the walls in my project are going to change, which is a real problem. And that's, like I was saying before, one of the main issues people have at first working with materials in Revit. So, as usual, right click on the material name, duplicate it, and I can just call it, say, paint, and red might be the colour I'm after. And then, as I've been showing you, I'm going to go straight to the Appearance tab, right click and replace, go to the Appearance folder, paint, and you can see there aren't too many colours there, but if you go to wall paint, you'll see there are lots more colours to get you started. And I know you can probably all make the colours that you want in that colour swatch anyway, but it's nice when you get these preset colours. So I'm after a dark red, and so I've got matte and glossy. I'm going to go for a matte there, double click, close the panel, and as always you can always click on that swatch and adjust that colour further if you like. Back to the graphics panel, and you'll see that this colour hasn't changed because I didn't have that use vendor appearance tick, so I'm going to tick it and it'll pick up the same colour. I can't change that colour again unless I turn this off. So if you want your shading colour to be different to the appearance, you need to just turn that off afterwards, and then you can adjust it and make it slightly different. You might want it to be, you know, just a bit lighter in the shaded views, for example, so the colour's a bit clearer. And that's it. So if I click OK now, I know that paint red is a new material. It's assigned to my new kind of wall, so only this wall is going to change. Unfortunately, I can't see that straight away because it's still selected. So I'm just going to click to one side, and you can see now it obviously has changed.
change both sides of the wall?
Yes, it does in this case because of the way it's set up. Actually, I'll show you something else there. So I'm going to select this wall. I've done this with some of the other walls you'll see. I've changed them so that they have the colour just on the outside. So I'm going to go to edit type there and then edit the structure, and you can see I've changed the one component that we have. So if I go and expand this, you can see it's changed all the way through. Now that's okay at first because you're using coarse displays and you'll have that set to black anyway for the main colour. But in some cases you will just want that to go around the outside. So to do that you can always insert more layers using the insert button, move them to where you want, change that thickness to 10 mil, insert another one, move it down, change that again to 10. So I'm going to change my thickness for the structure there back to 210 so that this still adds up to 230 and the overall thickness hasn't changed. Right, so now I'm going to go to set the function of that top layer to finish 2, the function of the bottom layer to finish 2, and then the material for both of these to that same paint red material that I've made. And then the inside panel, or the inside layer, I'm going to set back to finish. Because that's a nice plain material. So that way the colour's just going to go on the sides. But I also want to, because this wall's got an end exposed, this is the main thing I want to show you, you can set the wrapping option to, in this case, interior. But either of those would work actually. So it'll wrap around the end as well, and we'll see that red colour on the outside. So that way you can have the inside of the wall showing the original colour and just have that finished colour on the outside.
So if you don't wrap them on this exposed on this side, it's going to be white.
Yeah, exactly, that's right, yeah. And so if you're doing more detailed drawings, that's a useful process. But for most of the things you'll be doing, you can just set the material to the whole wall because you're just worried about how it looks on the outside.
But you can set the colour to be one colour one side and one colour the other, obviously, just by changing the structure.
Exactly, that's right, exactly, yeah.
Does it always have to give them thickness on the outside of the painting?
Yeah, you do, yeah. If you want two different materials, you have to give it thickness. But there's one other option actually. On the Modify tab, you'll see there's a Paint option. So with Paint, it'll bring up a panel where you can choose any material. So you need to have the materials made in advance. But once you do have them made, then you can choose any surface in your project. So I can say choose the inside of this wall here. I'll just choose a different material, say just that timber material. And just change any single surface to a different material. So I don't want that, but just so you can see that's a useful option. Some people get shown that at first when they're being taught Revit, but I usually avoid showing people at first because it works with things like walls and floors, but you can see there my furniture isn't coming up. It doesn't work with most families. So it's not a good all-round method of setting materials. Even though you'll see a lot of people when they're first learning Revit will try and use it for everything. And also, if you're using this all the time, Paint, you've got to go and pick every single surface in your project, which takes forever. So if you get used to managing your materials, going into the properties and changing the way I've been showing you, it's a lot better.
And by doing that, if you have your generic wall, you're just setting a paint on that generic wall, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, and you can reuse it.
To which one you pick though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So you can have several different types of walls and and then just choose the types as you go. So I'll do another video maybe to show you lighting because there's probably going to be a lot just to take in already. So what I might do though is just move these a little bit so I can go back and just show you quickly, even without the lighting, you can do quick renders. So I'm just going to make this spaced out a bit more. So we've got a bit more to look at, and go into that perspective view that I just made. I can see those things move. Using the camera again, also the navigation wheel, I'll orbit the view a bit, and then there's a window in this wall, I think, in the final design, so that would be a nice thing to have. So I just want to think about those little things when you're getting these views set up. So I think it's a longish window, something like this. So that window is going to help as well for my lighting. So using the teapot down the bottom, I've obviously got some lights in here, so I can render with those later. But for now, I'm just going to go to interior sun only. So even before you have the lights added, you can try this rendering with the sun. Turn the shadows on to see where the light's coming from. And if you click on the little sun icon down the bottom, you can go to sun settings, change it to still, hit apply, and then change the time to see the way that the light will come in at different times of the day. So I know from experience that we'll get afternoon sun in a room like this, so even fairly early, so I'm going to just about 3:30 or so. We'll get quite a bit of afternoon sun in there, and that'll be enough to render. Okay, so just with that basic setup, I can hit render, and I'm going to start to see how those materials look with lighting. Okay, so it looks a bit dark at the moment, but if I go to adjust exposure, I can increase the brightness here so that we can see more. With increased quality, you would get less of that smoky look on the wall, but this is just a draft, so we can get an idea how things look. The highlights there, I can reduce those right down with apply, so that'll tone this area down so we can see some detail there. The shadows I can make lighter as well. Pick up some more light over here, and then I can even adjust the midpoint just slightly and make that a tiny bit lighter, and again get some more detail. So on higher quality, even just on medium, we'll start to see some of those things a bit more clearly. Okay, so if you think about your views and try and get views in areas close to the windows, then you can, before you set the lighting up, get a pretty good idea how the materials are going to look in your renders. And you can see, don't be worried if they do seem too dark on draft, because as you increase the quality of the bounce lighting increases as well. So it's bouncing light from these bright areas into the darker areas. And then as you add your lights in, which I'll do that in another video for you, you can render with sun and artificial, and then these lights that are up here are going to give me even more light in these darker areas. So to prepare for the lighting, try and get your ceilings in there. Make sure you've got ceilings in all the areas that you want to place lights. And if you haven't done much work with ceilings before, remember they're not much harder than floors. And then one of the final things people often forget with interiors, because at first you'll be just focusing on the floors and the roofs, but don't forget your ceilings.
Do you have a video that shows how to put paintings in?
I think I might have done it in, yeah, I did, yeah.
I thought you did.
Yes, I did, yeah. So in the extra video I did, that's right. So for this one, it was in yep, the Beach House videos, and the extra one I did with O3A, creating preliminary views. I definitely did something there on putting decals in.
And what about did you show us how to add a rug? So if you have a rug and then you have something
Decals.
on top of it.
Yeah, so use a decal to make a rug as well.
That was on that, was it?
Yeah, so the same technique, it's just an image of the rug that you need to find, and then you place that with the decal on the floor, and they'll look really good.
And then you can put a piece of furniture on top of that?
Yeah.
You don't have to adjust the offset?
Nope, it'll just go on top. Yep, so they work really well. They look like 3D genuine rugs and other bits of fabric or whatever you've got on the floor. Yep.
Do you upload anything on YouTube?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. So. Okay, so it's not always that noticeable, but you can balance that out. There should be some noticeable lighting changes in here, but again, I'll do a video for you on lights. Just wanted to give you an idea that you can do some test renders to start setting up your materials. And even on medium, it doesn't take too long. Sometimes you've got to go up to medium to really see the materials, but try and do as much as you can on draft because it's obviously much, much quicker. And then maybe I'll just show you one, but I know I said I'd finish it up, but I'll just show you one last little thing because you haven't got much more time left. I'll just let that finish. People. Because normally you do this in Photoshop, but because you won't be doing Photoshop till next year, another way of bringing people in is using Revit. If you go to Component, Load Family, have a look in the Entourage folder, and you'll see that you have these two basic people, RPC female and RPC male. So I'll start with RPC female, and then you'll see in the list in Properties, below RPC female, you've got quite a few there. Kathy, Cynthia, Florence, and so on. Yep, so I'll go for Lisa, and yep, so we'll press space, and that'll rotate, and you can see now it is doing what I mentioned before, rotating at different angles. So I'm going to have her maybe looking out towards the balcony, and then I always forget which one's sitting. I think it's Cynthia, but we'll find out in a minute. So one of these is sitting, so I think it's, yeah, like I said, Cynthia, so I'll just have her facing away from the lounge. And then back in my perspective view, we can see them now. And yeah, that's right. So Lisa, you can see she's actually facing the opposite way to what I thought. So I'll, using space in the perspective view, flip her around, and oh no, so that's the problem. Some of these, they won't flip in every direction. Yeah, they're going to keep her looking that way. It'll flip the silhouette, but the photo is always facing that way. That's all you can do with her, but you can see Cynthia is the seated one, so that's going to work pretty well. And I'll just try one of the others. Kathy, I think, is one that, oh no, she's got the corporate look. So we'll try...
Are they all silhouettes?
Well, they're kind of. They use this trick. It's sort of a 3D, 2D hybrid. So they're a series of photos. So this one you can see she does flip around in different directions. So here with space, I can flip her to face.
But she's got no detailing. They're just black.
Oh no, no, that's, it's hard to see on the on the screen there, but that's actually a photo. So yeah, and same here. So that's I know it's really hard to see with the shadows on. I'll just turn the shadows off, and you can see the detail. Yeah, they could choose better people, but a lot of that's the projector not showing. Yeah, the hat's a little bit. I know they don't keep the fashions up to date, but what can you do about that? So. So anyhow, I'll give you something. It's nice to have people in your perspectives, and so there we are. They'll come up in the rendering, and with extra light they'll show a lot more detail. So maybe I'll just do a draft one because it's so quick, and you'll definitely see things that you can't see in the shaded view. And if you think this is slow rendering, this is nothing. I've got a job rendering at the moment for an animation project I need to make, and it's been rendering since last week. It's still going. I just checked on it this morning. Still got another few days to go.
If you look at the computer by itself to render,
Yeah, I've got 3 computers going. Yeah, that's just the way it is with rendering. If you have a look over what those 3D guys do, they have it rendering for weeks as well.
does the RAM help?
Yes, RAM and the processor.
What's the best RAM candidate? Is it 16?
Oh, yeah, all my computers have at least 16. I've got some with over 20.
Wow.
Yep.
And still slow.
Yep. Yep. That's for animation.
Yeah.
Still images, well, even for that project, I've got each frame down to under 10 minutes a frame, which is pretty fast for that sort of thing. But still, for animation, it's always going to take longer. So anyhow, you can see there the detail that comes up in these people. You have a lot more when you have the lighting. So that's all there is to it. So I'll just finish that video.